Hello, hello. Welcome to all our viewers who have tuned in today. Welcome to the episode 1 of our Fireside Chat series. I'm your host, Suffiyan Malik. In my short career, I've worked with companies enabling startups, aspiring entrepreneurs, and the tech and innovation ecosystem. Today, we're going to talk about what it takes to build global brands and what are executives looking for when they're hiring? How can you be that superstar they're looking for? And how to ask the right questions? Joining us for our very first session is Kat Cole. Kat, I would like to start off with the fact that I almost failed at electrical engineering too. I know that your major was computer science and electrical engineering, and you dropped out of college. But this gives a lot of hope to me and all our other electrical engineer friends out there. And so thank you for being such a good role model for us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
First job, first job at 17 as a waitress at Hooters, and all the way to making it vice president at the company. Um, you got a lot of lucrative offers, but you stuck with Hooters. We're going to talk more about that in the session. You were then called on to be the president of Cinnabon and the chief operations officer, leading the global growth during the recession. Again, we would like you to shed more light on that. And you have built a career out of navigating with peers who have been twice your age or more than twice your age. And I mean, I think that's a very important lessons for young professionals who are seeing success at a very young age and find it very hard to navigate themselves amongst professionals or peers who are older than them. So I think that will be a very important topic to talk about. You're also World Economic Forum YGL, which is a consequence of what you've accomplished during your career. For those of you who don't know, World Economic Forum Young Global Leaders are a community of some of the most successful individuals under 40. It's one of the most exclusive communities in the world. The likes of Mark Zuckerberg, Ivanka Trump, Emmanuel Macron, the President of France, Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Ali Jahangir Siddiqui, who is the chairman of GS Group in Pakistan, amongst many others, are part of this community. And Kat is a young global leader herself. I could keep going on with the introduction, but without wasting further time, I'm going to give the floor to Kat to tell you about what keeps her busy these days. Over to you, Kat.
Thanks so much. These days, I have just wrapped up a 10-year career managing multi-billion-dollar businesses. I was most recently the president and COO of a company called Focus Brands, which owns franchise food brands around the world like Auntie Anne's, Cinnabon, Jamba Juice, and more. And the things keeping me busy these days are my content creation. So writing a book, writing a newsletter, hosting rooms on Clubhouse, doing great video sessions like this. So that's one bucket of my activities, is sharing my knowledge and building community through mostly written or virtual connections. The second thing that I'm spending my time on is I sit on the board of directors for several amazing companies: Milk Bar, which is a global food company; Slice, which is a restaurant technology company; and Human Co. SPAC, which is one of these things many people are hearing about, SPACs, the Special Acquisition Corp, that is focused on taking wellness companies public. And I advise many high growth, mostly seed stage startups in the consumer sector. And then I am spending a ton of energy on angel investing and putting not only my advice into these companies and my time and energy, but my investing dollars. And so writing and creating community, advising and sitting on boards of directors, and investing in amazing earlier stage founders. So that's where I'm spending my time.
Awesome. Well, speaking of angel investments and advising startups, We also have, we just recently developed an angel investment platform by the name of Teamup Angels for Pakistan. Pakistan is a huge startup opportunity. It's a fifth most largest population in the world. We've seen a 16% increase in the number of internet subscribers, users of 3G, 4G, just in 2020. So
Wow.
that's 110 million people using the internet. In terms of capital raised by Pakistani founders, it went up by 97%. We saw a growth rate of 97% in 2020, $77 million raised by Pakistani founders. So with that, I would like to invite you to our National Investor Summit next month.
Ah, cool.
All right, so moving on to our conversation for this chat. Kat, you talked, I was listening to one of your podcasts earlier, and you talked about the importance of relationship capital within your company and a learning environment where you're continuously learning, you have flexibility, and you're comfortable. For all the young career professionals out there, what would your advice be?
The reality is your relationships are as important to your professional endeavors, whether it be starting your own company, gaining investment, having success in the marketplace, or working in someone else's company. The relationships are as important as your technical capabilities. Neither is more important than the other, but I have learned that it is very easy to be very technically strong, but if you don't have the relationships for people to think of you for opportunities or to know a little more about who you are, how you like to operate, where you fit best, what your goals are, if you don't have that, you'll miss opportunities. It's not the end of the world. But avoiding the end of the world is not our goal. The goal is to optimize outcomes. And I've always thought, why would I ever want a door closed to me? Doesn't mean I have to walk through it, but I appreciate and have benefited from having so much optionality at all times in my career. And those options increase the more you help people and they want to support you back, and the more you open up to people about what you're good at and what you want. So if they hear of something, they think of you very easily.
I think you mentioned a very important point there. Having a lot of doors open does not mean you need to walk through every door. So can you talk a little bit more about when you were going up like this in your early 20s and you were seeing all these options open up for you? How are you reacting to those? How are you? It's very easy to be overwhelmed and consider every other opportunity. It's human. What were your reactions? Walk us through some of those examples, some of the opportunities you got when you were in your early days, in your early 20s at Hooters.
Yeah, I remember I became vice president of the company at the age of 26. We were doing 800 million in revenue. I was the youngest executive by 25 or 30 years. And so on one hand, I felt very fortunate. And on the other hand, I also knew that I was special in a way because that was unusual. And so I both appreciated the opportunities that company gave me at such an early age and recognized that many other companies might not take a chance on someone so young. But I also believed I still had much to learn. And so as opportunities started coming in, other companies recruiting me, 1 year later, 2 years later, I took every phone call and had a kind conversation with people. And that helped me understand what was available to me over time. But to your point, I didn't say yes to any of them, until I eventually left many years later. And the thought process for me was always being rooted in what I value most. And I learned early on that my currency was learning. And if my currency is learning, I need to be in the place where I will learn the most, the fastest. That means I need to be in the place where I will do the most different things, where I will have the opportunity to fail and make mistakes. And most of the companies that were recruiting me for bigger companies and more salary, more money, but very simple roles. So bigger company, still an executive, but to manage one department, because that's how bigger companies think. And I had the opportunity when I was at Hooters to have my hands in many things, in supply chain and operations and franchising. We owned hotels, we owned an airline, we were still growing internationally, and the company was big, but still small enough where I could experiment and leave my thumbprint on it. And so even though I liked the idea of more money and working for a bigger company that was maybe more well known, what I didn't like is it appeared that I would learn less. I mean, we can all justify a change because I can learn something in a box. It's not that I wouldn't learn in a new company. It's that I didn't see the opportunity to learn as much as fast as staying at Hooters. So for me, I was so clear. Where can I learn the most? Where can I be given the biggest variety of responsibility? And every time I was recruited to go to another company, when I asked that question, the answer was to stay where I was. Eventually, the answer many years later was to leave, because now I was being offered to be the president of a company, and that end of a company that had many brands and in many countries. And so now all of a sudden there was an opportunity where I would learn more if I left than if I stayed. And so I would encourage people to be clear about what's important to them. Maybe there's a point in your life where you're supporting a family, and money is the most important, and you have to follow the money. And that's okay, right? You do what you need to do, and hopefully you get to a point where you have more choice. And if learning is what you want, then you can afford to go somewhere and work for free or work for less, or experiment or start your own company, which in the early years doesn't typically provide profit or income. So that's the way I navigated those decisions.
Now, you mentioned that you were able to do everything. I can kind of relate to that. So I team up in my company here. We're like an octopus, kind of doing everything, a bit of everything. So it's a very exciting journey, and there's a lot to learn. And I think that's what makes it exciting for young professionals if they want to kind of experiment with everything and see what's for them.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so you talked about your journey of taking many brands global all over the world. Like you took Cinnabon global as well during a recession. Can you reflect more light on that? How did that journey look like? It must have been when you took over. What did it feel like?
I mean, it felt very exciting when something is in a very bad place. At least my mentality is we can only go up from here. Like it can't get worse. So I was very positive. And that positivity was needed because everyone in the company that had been on the downslope was very tired, and not happy necessarily, and not sure about the future. So a new leader coming in has to be positive, has to focus on what's possible, not disillusioned, not so positive that people think, are you crazy? Do you not see how bad it is? But focusing on what's possible. And so to me, it only appeared that we could get better. Yet I respected and understood the pain and the challenges that the franchisees and the employees and the company were going through. And that is a delicate balance, to respect the reality of those who are doing the hard work and keeping the momentum moving toward what is possible. So that's how I viewed the situation.
Okay, well, there aren't many cat calls out there who look at every downside as an opportunity to take everything up from there. So, well, more on that. How do you stay positive? How do you take that approach? especially for the younger people out there, how do you take that approach to everything you face in life? Because it helps throughout. It's not just your professional life, it helps you personally as well, having that approach. So what's your core? What do you follow? How do you build that core?
I mean, sometimes the reality is the answer is not to be positive. Sometimes being positive is disconnected from reality, right? I'll give you an example. So, when I was doing work with the United Nations Global Entrepreneurs Council, and we are in Zataari, which is one of the largest refugee camps in the world, it would not have been appropriate for me to go in and say, oh, look how great, this is, even though there were positive things. And they were making the most of a very difficult situation, to say the least. But what was appropriate was for me to see the possibilities, right? There's a difference. Positivity can come across as disconnected from reality, like, oh, everything's going to be great. Sometimes everything's not going to be great. But that's okay. And so focusing on possibility and working on things that are highly probable to move toward possibility, that's the technique I use. And for me, both personally and professionally, when something is difficult or painful, I try to think, will I remember this in 5 years? When I look back 5 years from now, I imagine myself 5 years from now. Will I even remember this day? And if the answer is yes, then I decide that I want to be very proud of how I handle this moment, since I am going to remember it in 5 years. And that motivates me to take action. But if the answer is no, I probably won't remember it. It doesn't mean that I still take it seriously, but I don't let it stress me out, because it's not going to matter, in the scheme of things. I mean, I need to address a concern. I need to do my job. I need to work on a problem. But if it's not going to stand out to me when I'm telling my kids a story 5 years, from now, or my friends, then I shouldn't stress. I need to take it seriously, handle it professionally, and move on, and not let it weigh on my heart, and rest on my shoulders.
It kind of slides down the priority list when you look at it that way, right? Right. So a lot of questions are coming in terms of what executives like yourselves look for when hiring. What do you look for while hiring those superstar employees? And how do people in their young ages, during their college, how do they train to be those superstar employees?
First, I think it's important to realize that using the term superstar for a person is very dangerous, because no one is a superstar at everything they do.
Mhm.
No one, right? So there are maybe 2 things you do that are better than everyone. And then there are 2 things you do that are as good as others. And there are 2 things you do that are not as good as other people. That is true for everyone on the planet. And what I find is when a leader mistakenly looks at someone as a superstar all around, they hold them to unrealistic expectations. They do not give them the training that they need in certain jobs. And it turns out to be not good. At the same time, I meet individuals who think they themselves are superstars in every way, and they have no humility. And they don't acknowledge that there are things they need to learn. Even my story, as someone who was an executive at such young ages, even now, as someone who's been a president of brands and global businesses for 10 years, over 10 years, there are things that I am okay at. There are things that I am not good at. And there are things that I'm amazing at. And I have learned to lean into the things that I'm good at. Try to prioritize if the things I'm okay at really matter. And the things I'm not good at, I have to decide, are they things that I need to improve? And if so, I will learn, work with experts, and try to get much better fast. Or are those things that I'm just never going to be good at, and someone else is good at those things and I should delegate, partner with them, have them be my co-founder, have them be an employee. So I just want to call that out. And so then what you're looking for is for employees to have high potential. No one is going to be a superstar across the board. So executives who hire employees are looking for high potential. Actually, an acronym called MAP, MAP in English, merit, ability, and potential. Merit is the deservingness of the role. Ability is the technical abilities, and potential, of course, is what they can grow into. So I ask questions and do reference checks for those three areas. And I work to have that person give me examples of their merit, their deservingness, their ability, give me technical examples of your work, and their potential. How do they navigate challenges? What happens when they deal with something unexpected? Some people are very good at their jobs only when things are good. And when there's chaos, they don't just get a little bit worse, they get a lot worse. And it's important to know that.
Again, I went through almost all your podcasts. So you talked about hiring in one of those and having a set of questions that you use every time, because that gives you a standard to measure against. Can you share some of those questions that you ask while hiring?
Sure. One of the questions I ask when hiring is I ask people to, share some of their best work. And then I ask the question about enablers. So what else was present that allowed you to have those successes? People in an interview come in and say, I did this, I did this, I did this. And no one does these things alone. Unless you literally are independently coding a thing. And then yes, you did that alone. But you still had access to certain technology to do that. And so what I'm trying to understand in that question is, what do you need to be successful? What do you need to be as successful as you telling me you are and have been? And do we have that here for you? If not, you might not be as successful as you're telling me you're going to be. And it may mean that I don't hire you, or it may mean I'm just thinking of what I need to put in place to make sure I get the best of you. So that's a question in an interview. The other question is asking people to explore what their reputation is amongst their peers and what people would say about them if I asked. So I say, who knows you the best? Most people say, my mom, my wife, my best friend. And then I ask, what's the thing they would tell me that they love about you? And what's the thing they would tell me that really annoys them about you? And because I make it personal, because it's personal, then I get a more honest answer. And that more honest answer helps me explore, again, what does this person need to be successful?
Right. No, thank you for sharing those questions. I think they'll be really, really helpful for the community that's asking questions. And in terms of you talked about superstar being a dangerous word, and thank you for redefining it. I think I completely agree with you. In terms of that superstar employee definition, it's about the map approach you talked about: ability, merit, and potential. Hiring for potential, and then looking for if they even suit the environment you're going to give them, will they be successful in that? But when it comes to ability and demonstrating that through your past work, would you like to shed importance on um, doing that work, in shedding importance on saying yes when you get the opportunity and not thinking too hard on what the opportunity is, because you need to put in those hours, you need to work to be able to talk about it, right? Fresh grads get out of having 3 months of work under their belts expecting to earn, if you're in the US, they'd be expecting something 80K plus at least. If you're in Pakistan, of course, you'd be expecting above average. Again comes back to managing expectations and knowing deep down what you work for and does it allow you to achieve those goals. Over to you.
Yeah, I think the reality is when you're new, you're new. and and a job is going to typically pay a range of a salary. And when you are earlier in your journey, you get the lower end of that salary. When you have more experience, you get the higher end of the salary. But I don't think people talk about the reason for that enough. And the reason is this: if you are inexperienced and you come work for me, I need to have more people spending more time to support you, which costs me additional money. So if the value of the work is 70,000 US dollars, but I have to supplement you with 10% of someone else's time, 5% of someone else's time, I'm spending $70,000, but I'm just not giving it all to you because I'm having to cut into the productivity of other people. And it's so simple, it's a simple way to think about it, but many people don't think that. And they think, oh, well, I'm being treated differently because I'm young. No, the company's having to invest more to support you in your early days. And until you can be sufficiently competent on your own, you do not deserve that fuller dollar amount. You must earn your way to the fact that you can do 70,000 US dollars worth of work on your own. And then when you move up to the next level, it happens again. Now you're in a new range and you're on the lower end of the range. When you keep, it seems so obvious, but I find that in a good way, people are very confident in their own abilities. And of course, you should ask for everything that you could possibly get. And you should understand when you get less than everything, because you are on a journey to working your way up. And every time you move up, you're back at the lower end of that spectrum.
No, thank you for sharing those insights. And you're right. It's a very simple concept, but 90% of us fail to look at it that way. And it's only when we become employers and we're on the other side of things is when we start realizing that, oh, this is why we were paid what we were paid when we were starting out. So I think that's a very important piece of advice for everyone. The other thing, I love what you said about taking critique. So going back to the Hooter days, when you launched your I think the first 3 or 4 locations you open up, you realized something was wrong. And then somebody gave you advice about taking critique. Can you shed more light on that?
Yeah, I was opening a restaurant in Argentina and a lot of things went wrong. And the franchisee gave me some very important advice, which is whenever you are criticized, assume first that the critique is correct. Just in your mind, entertain that the critique may be correct. And that changes your mindset so that if you consider this might be accurate and you still decide it's absolutely not, right? No truth. Then instead of reacting to just no, you focus on why. Like, well, that's actually not true because. And it's a more productive discussion and debate. But what happens most frequently is when I entertain, is this accurate? I acknowledge at least some part of it probably is, or at least it is their valid perspective. And so I don't, the phrase in the US is don't put your foot in your mouth. I don't know what the same phrase is in Pakistan, but the point is some people get very mad and then realize, I was wrong. And this act of considering criticism to be accurate helps us realize there is often truth in criticism. And then we can acknowledge that there is some truth and decide how we want to work together to address that. And it just gives you the reputation of being reasonable, collaborative, humble, and gives you the opportunity to actually improve more often. If you deny the critiques you get, you will not improve as fast as I will, because I acknowledge the feedback and I want to get a little better every day.
Keeps you grounded as well, right? So can you share a moment from your career when you realized you were completely, excuse my French, screwing up, and you realized what you were doing wrong, and you saw it, uh, and how you turned it around?
Yeah, it was, really about acknowledging the fundamentals of the business. And the reality was there were situations that were beyond my control. I could not fix the economy. But what I can do is make the business we do have more profitable. That helps the franchisees make a little more money. I can focus on innovation that will drive sales when the economy improves. And I can look for new channels like grocery or other businesses that are still experiencing growth, and find a way to partner with people that are good in those channels to help me show up in those ways much more quickly. And you put all those together, right? More profitable, innovation that drives sales as the economy improves, and look for new places to do business that are having success during this time. And you put all that together, and that's what led to us turning around the business.
Okay. Now I'm going to come to a harder question. So a lot of employees don't know how to communicate to their superiors when they know or they think their superiors are doing something wrong, right? I heard you mention that Hooters going into the airline business uh, was a wrong move. So did you ever bring that up? Uh, I'm sorry, I'm putting you on the spot here. Did you bring that up with the management? And what's the best way to bring these things up with the management as a young employee?
So that example is probably not a good one, because it was a privately held company. The CEO owned the company completely, so he could do whatever he wanted. And he wanted to be in the airline business. And several of us reacted and said, well, we don't know how to run an airline, and that's distracting to the business. The executives did say that. And then he responded, if you don't like it, you can leave.
So the advice could be for the people who are working in private companies.
Yeah, the reality is sometimes, of course, as long as it's not illegal or hurting people, companies can make their own decisions, and especially the executives have to decide, am I going to support this or not? And that CEO was very clear. We are going into the airline business. If you don't like it, you can
You're
leave.
out. You
Yeah.
can leave.
And so we said, okay, we're going in the airline business. And we figured out how to do the best we could with an airline. And we had fun with it once we started doing it, but it closed 4 years later. It was not a good idea.
But the experience of learning throughout the project of figuring out how to learn and run an airline would have been amazing. I mean, you're gonna be able to keep that experience for life
Yeah.
and use it in other places as well.
Yeah, but I think that's the less common scenario for people listening to this. The more common scenario is when you think a decision that you can control is not a good one, right?
Yeah.
How do you give feedback? So here's one thing I think is always effective. Instead of saying, I think that's a terrible idea, I don't like it, it won't work. Because no one likes to hear that about their ideas, especially a founder or a CEO. Rather, communicate it through the lens of who you both care about equally, which is the customer. So, here's what I think that might do to the customer. Here is talk about the customer through the lens of the customer, and make it not about your idea versus my idea, but rather talk about the why behind your concern. And so that's one way, is to frame it through the lens of the impact on the customer. The other way to frame it is to not say the customer won't like this or this is bad for the customer, but to say, well, interesting. In order for that to happen, we would need these three things, right? So it's framing it as, I'm with you, but what is required to make this idea happen does not exist today. And so if we're willing to do these things and create a different scenario, I could get behind that. And it makes it again about what is required to do the thing and or about the customer. And that is a more collaborative shoulder, a phrase I use, in English, shoulder to shoulder, not nose to nose, right? Shoulder to shoulder is, I'm looking at things with you. It is a physical metaphor, but it's about mindset. I'm looking at it with you. I'm exploring it with you. Nose to nose is debate. It's a fight. That rarely works with anyone. So that would be my advice.
That's a really good life advice, actually.
Isn't it all?
Yeah.
Business is personal.
Business is personal. Absolutely. So thank you for, I think we've covered pretty much everything we could have in this time frame for careers and how to navigate your career. And thank you so much for your time so far. I think we have a few entrepreneurs who've joined us as well from our community. So can you tell us, what are you actively investing at this point? If you are, what kind of startups are you looking at?
So my husband and I angel invest together. So we have a family investing arm. And we focus primarily, not exclusively, but primarily on the consumer sector, seed stage, post revenue. So we do not invest at the idea stage. It's just not our expertise. We invest once there's a little bit of traction, a proof of concept, we can see it, touch it, feel it, use it, advocate for it, mostly in the consumer sector. So that might be supplements or beverage or apparel. We're investing in a few marketplaces. Again, they're post revenue, right? So that's our vibe. We invest globally. So companies all around the world, although it is easier to understand, of course, for us, the American marketplace. And so we have more confidence in taking a chance at a seed stage, early revenue company, because we can see it, touch it, order it, send it to our friends. We can really believe. It takes more work and more research to invest in international seed stage startups, but it's not off the table. And so I think that is really our focus. We write $10,000 to $25,000 US angel investing checks, and we do 8 to 12 of those per year. So we have a limit. It's not an endless well. And what's great is more wonderful companies are being started. And so we may be tapped out of our budget by April because we're seeing so many good companies. I think we've already made 5 investments this year.
Wow.
And it's just now February.
So
it's very exciting.
So if we are to send any startups your way, they should be before April. I'm writing that down. Okay.
Yes, the money is running out. Or I just need to go do more speeches and make more additional money so that I can just invest it in companies. That's how I think about it.
No, thank you for sharing that. I think that'll be very useful for the community, because we'll be promoting this recording after the event, and the reach will go out to the entire country. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. I have a quick rapid fire round prepared for you as we enter our last 10 minutes of the conversation. So are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
All right. When you think of the word successful, who is the first person that comes to your mind, and why?
My mom. She raised 3 girls on her own as a single mother. She worked 3 jobs. The output of her work is 3 healthy, independent daughters. She's now running her own small business. And, that is success, right? She broke the pattern of her past. She broke the pattern of families on both sides. And that is very difficult to do.
No, absolutely. Um, what is the something that you believe in and other people think is completely insane?
I believe that most humans on the planet are magic. I believe that people are capable of far more than they know. And as a result, I treat them that way. And because of that, they perform better when they are with me than they do others.
Very well articulated. That's beautiful. What's the last show that you binge watched and loved?
Oh, I think it was Bridgerton.
Oh, so you're binge watching like the rest of us.
Oh, yes.
That's good to know. What's the one thing you're deeply grateful for right now?
Oh, so many things. I am deeply grateful for the health of my family, like deeply grateful for the health of my family. That is wealth. That is wealth. And you don't really know that and believe it until someone you love is deeply ill. And then you care about nothing else. And that is important to remember, even when you have good times. I mean, I sit around in the mornings with my husband and my 1-year-old and my 3-year-old. And sometimes I'm tired and sometimes they're crying or fighting or just being difficult. But I just realize I'm so lucky that that is my biggest problem this morning, right? And so it just makes everything else nice, like optional, but nothing is more important than that. Nothing. And we're all healthy right now. So that's good.
I think if for all our audience out there, if that's how we start going about our everyday, um, think about what we're grateful for, our days would start out a whole lot better. Thank you for sharing that, Kat. How do you continue to learn in order to stay on top of things?
I continue to put myself in new communities and groups where I know the least about their topic. That's it. Right. And then I listen to them and I absorb and I realize I always know a little more about things than I think. But I am humbled by other people's expertise in a particular topic. So I'm constantly putting myself in different groups and I'm comfortable being the least knowledgeable. And that helps me grow very quickly. I now know a lot about a lot of things because of that.
And what are you not very good at?
Oh, um, I am not very good at exercising every day right now. I'm doing a lot of Zooms, a lot of, Clubhouse rooms and I'm writing a book. And so I'm having to sit and be here and write. And so right now I'm not doing a good job of prioritizing my fitness. So I'm committing to doing better over the next few weeks and see if I can make that a bit more of a habit.
I think that makes the two of us and a few billions more of us around the world who are on the same routine because of the virtual world that we live in now. Speaking of Clubhouse, what do you think about the app? I've seen that you've done a few rooms. The app is all over the place right now. It's there are a lot of random talks going around. But
Yeah.
how do you see Clubhouse emerging as one of the biggest social apps of etc.?
Yeah, I mean, I've been on it since the early beta test flight days. And it was obvious it was special then. It's just more people know it now.
Yeah.
And it will be the next YouTube, truly.
Yeah,
Just
it's
just easier to use because it's audio. So you don't have to be on video. You can listen more passively. Um, you can be in your night clothing, on a room. It doesn't matter. So it's that big, truly. I
it's
host
amazing.
many rooms very consistently because of that.
You run a club by the name of Leadership Circle, if I'm not wrong.
Leadership Lab.
Leadership Lab, right? And you do weekly events on it, or is
I do,
it?
I do consistent weekly events called office hours where we workshop leadership topics of the week. And then I host, various other discussions through Leadership Lab, sometimes evening, Eastern time, sometimes morning, so I can catch people from around the world. And I co-host those with different people who've become friends from the platform.
Yeah, I noticed you had Ashton Kutcher on last time, and you have someone from around the world on, someone big every time. A lot to learn from the leadership labs. Are those available for our audience here? Are those, because not everyone is on Clubhouse yet? It's not open to everyone yet. Are those events available on YouTube later, or anywhere else where they can find them?
Not right now. It's sort of you you hear it or
It's
you don't.
it's Clubhouse only.
Yeah, but a few things. One, if people need invites, as long as you have an iPhone, it's not available on Android yet. They're working on it, but it will take some time. If people need invites, tell them to, DM me on Twitter. And as long as I can validate their social profile, because my name goes on the nomination, so I have to make sure they're good people. um, and so I'm happy to share an invite through Leadership Lab. And as long as you have an iPhone, you can attend and explore and hear. Eventually, I will start recording and some of the bigger rooms and posting them to YouTube, almost like a podcast, but not yet.
I am looking forward to that. And now, as we move towards the end, I would like your feedback on the session, as it was my first time hosting and it was our first session going live from the Teamup and Career Launchpad channel.
Nice. No, it's been great. Very smooth technically, and love that you have so many questions prepared. That's very important. And certainly, hopefully, we got to some of the questions that people have been asking in the Q&A. And no, so I think it's been fantastic. It makes me feel very good to know that I can connect with people in so many different parts of the world.
No, thank you so much for taking out the time today from your very busy schedule and your billable hours which you use for angel investing. So thank you for taking out the time today. I will request my team to send you details for the investor summit. Would you be up for it in March?
Just depends on the schedule and availability. Don't want to promise something I can't deliver
No,
on.
no, I
So
know.
happy
So
to consider.
we'll run it by you. We'll run it by you, and if you're available, we'd love to have you. Consider this your invitation to Pakistan as well.
Thank you.
Uh,
I cannot wait. So I would love to come.
No, you'll love meeting our co-founders as well. Our co-founders are Zohair Khalik and Pervez Abbasi. They're some of the biggest names in the industry. Zohair was the former CEO of Pakistan's largest telecommunication company called Jazz, Moblink in the days, back in the days.
Cool.
And he's currently a member of the Prime Minister's task force on IT and telecom.
Awesome. Super.
And Pervez ran one of the biggest handset businesses in the country in the early 2000s.
Cool.
He's currently the director of National Incubation Center. And yeah, so this is an invitation to you to visit Pakistan in a post-COVID world that we are all waiting for and isn't arriving. And hope to connect with you soon.
Yeah, well, an invitation back to any of you that are visiting the US in a post-COVID world. If you're in Atlanta, let me know. And certainly I would love to see more of the Pakistan community on Clubhouse. So if you have an iPhone, definitely let me know so I can get you an invite.
One last question. If I'm in Atlanta, what's the best place to catch you?
Well, everyone's still working from their homes primarily now. So a nice coffee or tea on my porch is the best place. And then there is one coffee shop that has outdoor seating where I work from time to time called Victory Coffee. So either at my home or there.
Or victory coffee. Okay. Thank you, Kat. So, last advice, concluding the session. What's your concluding advice for all the young professionals out there?
I would just remember you're on a journey and you're very early in that journey. So give it all you've got in the early days. And don't forget where you came from. Obviously, that's been a point of strength for me, even though my story is very difficult. It's a point of strength. So don't forget where you came from, but you're not defined by it. Don't let it solely define you. Your truth is in your history and your roots, but your past is not a jail or an anchor. It's one of my favorite mantras that I use for companies that I turn around and for myself as a person.
Thank you. Thank you, Kat, for your time. And thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. And
Yeah.
we look forward to hosting Kat soon.
Yeah. Follow me on Twitter, connect, DM me. I do a newsletter every couple weeks. So lots of ways to stay close.
Thank you.